Good morning and welcome to P4P. Today we're talking about Professional League of Digital Assessors. I think in the times we're living, we all know that things are changing. Everything is kind of moving online. This crisis that the world's going through with COVID-19 is changing the way we are doing things and speeding up the way we're looking at education in a different light. Today we're launching Professional League of Digital Assessors. And just to get going, we're going to talk to Darren. And he's just going to give us a little bit of an overview about what we are talking about today in a little bit of context. Darren, over to you.
Morning and thanks, Gabriel. So, my name's Darren. I've been playing in the space of learning, development, and assessment for a couple of years now. And a group of us have kind of got together in terms of trying to figure out what the world of assessment looks like in the broader sense of assessment. So not only ETDP or ETD, education training assessment, but assessment through the different areas and focuses of business. And we are really kind of grappling with how do we professionalize this thing called assessment. There seems to be a lot of confusion around it. There seems to be, everyone has an opinion. Opinions are kind of diverse and quite wide. So we're launching this league where we want to join everyone, bring people together and explore assessment, professionalize assessment, and enable people to keep their skills sharp, stay at the edge of their game, and work with us and professionalize what we're doing so that we actually gain the respect that assessment really needs, because this is the foundation of any business. Most of what anyone does in a business is some form of assessment. And in that, we are using and we're moving to digital. So assessment predominantly is analog at the moment or paper-based. So we are able to move it digitally through, and that's why P4P is launching this initiative through an e-portfolio in e-assessment technology, but it will grow from there and get a lot bigger. So today we're launching this. We're building a database of assessors that we can then offer to clients. Clients can come to us, businesses can come to us and ask our group, our team, as we grow, what the what should they look for when they're looking for assessors? How should it be? We're setting up a rating scale so assessors can rate themselves, and ultimately we're about to change the world of assessment that is going to change post COVID-19 lockdown. Thanks, Gabriel.
Awesome, thank you, Darren. Just to get started, I would just like to give everyone an opportunity just to quickly introduce themselves. So on our panel today, we've got Giselle, Peter, Colin, Miguel, and Darren, obviously. Giselle, if you can start and just give us a 30-second introduction to yourself. How do you fit into the space and what's your background?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Giselle McIntyre. I have been in the assessment space for almost 20 years. Started actually as a psychometrist and work in organizational design with KPIs, which is also a form of assessment. I'm the managing director of Transcend Consulting, which is a skills development specialist company.
Awesome. Lovely. Thank you. Peter.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Horn. I am the owner and director of Hornby. I'm a learning and development design and development technologist and expert. I have been playing in the space of learning and development for over 24 years now, focusing on design and development, and obviously assessment and assessment practices is key and critical to the process. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing insights and learning from my colleagues this morning.
Awesome, thank you. Colin?
Hi, my name's Colin. I'm the training manager in the Sun International Group, specifically all the way down in Port Elizabeth, Port Casino. I'm a fan of gamification and a fan of development and getting people out there and increasing their skills and knowledge. That's the space that I kind of play in, and I love it.
Awesome, thank you, Colin. Miguel?
Good morning. My name is McGill van der Schuyf. I own a consultancy business where I represent organizations in the learning and development space. I consider myself a learning and development specialist. I speak Sakwa fluently as well as NQF. And for me, there is a great synergy between the ETD landscape and what business represents, and I try and synergize that for my clients.
Awesome, thank you. And then Darren, just a little background.
So I'm Darren, and I am a L&D professional, but with a strong technology background. So I am the co-founder of P4P, an e-portfolio and e-assessment platform. So not e-learning, digital assessment and digital portfolios. So we have been pioneering the space and pioneering digital RPL for the past couple of years. Yep, that's me.
Awesome, thank you very much. Maybe just a little bit background on me. My name is Gabriel LaRue. I'm a professional sound engineer. As I said, I've run some small businesses, but I've also always had a passion for training. I've also recently done my designation as a professional sound engineer with Sakya to try and tie that in with this product, which is Soundcraft. I support this product in South Africa, which ties in heavily with kind of what we've been talking about. I realized in doing training and teaching people how to use a piece of hardware, what a massive scope there is for education in South Africa. And that's kind of how my journey with Darren has started. And that's going to bring us to our questions. We're going to go through a few questions. The first is going to Giselle. And the question is, what is an assessor?
Right, I think an assessor is a lot more than people tend to think. I think in the old days, we thought an assessor was somebody who did insurance. But nowadays, we know that an assessor is someone who is basically a subject matter expert in any environment, in any field, and is then able to assess performance against a set or an accepted standard. So there's a specific standard that's been accepted either by or in the education and training space, it might be a unit standard or a qualification or an exit level outcome. And an assessor will then plan that assessment, conduct the assessment and gather the evidence together with the person that they are assessing, give proper feedback, act professionally in that regard, and then do proper reporting afterwards with a review in terms of it. In essence, an assessor is looking at productivity, usually in the workplace, and or in an environment of education or training, and is giving feedback which is quite developmental in nature. So the idea is that you refer to someone as not yet competent, which means that you've identified gaps and you can then also recommend what can be done for growth further from that.
Awesome. I think maybe just to follow on that, what would you say, what kind of experience would an assessor need? What kind of background, according to you?
Assessors, as a rule, need to be a subject matter expert in their environment. So you can have a crane operator who is only a crane operator, but can be an exceptional assessor as a crane operator. And then you get more like what probably most in this panel are, which are assessment practitioners who have broadened their experience in terms of where they can do assessments. So it can be anything from that you are assessing one particular thing in a workflow, in an operational space or a productivity space, all the way through to the design and development of recognition of prior learning tools, all of those kind of things. It's an enormous field, actually.
Okay, awesome, great, thank you very much. Next question is to Peter. Why professionalize assessment?
Yeah, thanks. Really, to answer that question, we need to have a broader understanding on what we understand by professionalism. And there are lots of written, obviously, documents, and in the space of ETD, a lot is being said, especially in the world of SACWA and the NQF. But really what it boils down to is making sure that we have a means of quality assuring the assessment process. And as Giselle said, assessment is very broad. It doesn't only exist within the ETD space, which most assessors think or operate within. To professionalize anything means that we're focusing on quality, which means that we're giving our end users, whoever they may be, whether they are learners or workers, employees, colleagues, an assurance of something they can trust in. So the process needs to be sound. It also encourages social responsibility and accountability towards what we are doing, the service we are providing. And the focus on standards is very, very critical. And in this instance, with DLAP, we're focusing on the VAX, which is validity, authenticity, currency, consistency, sufficiency, fairness, and reliability. The foundations that we all prescribed to when we all started out on this journey in skills development back in 1992, and which I think gets lost because when we start doing any kind of professional work, and as something grows, sometimes the growth can exceed the aim or the objective of what we're doing. And the risk is that we can, and this is what we're faced with right now, is that on the one end, we have a ticking exercise, which means that people are just prescribing to a motion of assessment. On the other side, we have over-bureaucratized major paperwork, major effort, which just loses the focus of what we're trying to get. And that is to ensure that we are assessing the right things, and results are very important. So productivity is the language of all business. As Giselle said, that is what we are, whether we are doing coaching assessment or whether we're doing ETD assessment or performance assessment, we're all focusing towards an end result of making sure someone is productive at the end. And that means that we need to prescribe to those standards. Professionalization means that we can lead our practice as well. And I think that now, with digitizing the assessment process, we have a means to do this in a more streamlined fashion. It's a more exciting in that it brings collaboration together and it crosses borders, and the discussions and the way in which we do assessments can now be questioned and can be honed. And I think that, we have a better scope and a more exciting future in terms of coming together as a group of assessors.
Awesome. I've got another question for you, Peter, from Darren. Are there different types of assessors, is his question, and is there a need for it?
Yeah, there are. And I think when I was prepping, well, not that I think, when I was prepping for this discussion, I was actually thinking the main question would be, are we duplicating effort? Are we redoing something that has been done years and years? And are we just another one of those? And so in answer to that question and the number and the variety of different assessors is this. We have assessment in every single field of operation where there's interaction between an individual or group of individuals. And assessment happens within all sectors of industry, all divisions within industry. As human beings, we are always assessing our world, and we are assessing what we do in relation to what needs to be done for output purposes. And assessment then at that simplistic form can then become what we call academicized or put to an academic world by attaching it to a set of standards and outputs, and we can then become more complicated in a way of which we assess. So as Giselle said, the context will vary for each assessor. The important thing is understanding the process and quality assuring the whole process from beginning to end. And I think that, and I believe that as we're going and growing as skills development practitioners, we've often lost sight of that process for various reasons. And we've allowed things to distract from the process of assessment. And as a result, we're not looking and seeing and paying attention to the results anymore. The process or the bureaucracy of assessment has become bigger than the actual heart and soul of why we are assessors, why we're assessing.
Awesome, very good. Thank you for that. Next, we're moving on to Colin, and the question is, what is it in it for me, the assessor?
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. I think it's pretty straightforward. In my context as a training manager, I can shake a stick and hit half a dozen training providers out there, and I'm going to want to question the quality of their facilitation, the quality of their material, and the quality of their assessment. So as an assessor, you're fighting in a market of many people out there that are doing the same thing as you. What makes you different? What makes you stand out? And so from a corporate point of view, I want to know that the training provider that I'm using and the assessors that are assessing the portfolios of evidence in this example are doing that to a really high standard, and that I'm going to get a quick turnaround time. And I think this league is the perfect answer for that.
Awesome. Maybe just following on to that, and this is something that me and Darren have spoken about quite a lot, but and I've noticed this with me doing my designation recently, is that initially getting into so in our industry, Sakia is obviously the group that you want to be part of, and initially becoming part or getting a professional designation is fairly simple. The outlines are quite straightforward. You need to have this amount of hours, and this needs to be your experience in the field, and you need some references and so on and so forth. Then when it comes to the ongoing learning is where it gets interesting, because our industry is so unregulated. We don't do office hours. We kind of out in the field all the time, and proving your ongoing learning is actually quite complicated. I don't know. What's your view on that? What's the kind of platforms or the mechanisms to make that connection between like an industry like ours, that's completely unregulated? We're trying to figure out how it's going to work, and you as an assessor, how does those two things tie together? What's your view on that?
Oh, great question. How do you prove that you're not just the entry-level guy? How do you prove that your experience and your time and your hours means something different? And what we're trying to create in this platform with the league is something which we can then measure and say, you're this good. You're adding extra value, so you're this good. And you can put that as a badge of honor almost, and say, I'm not only part of the league, but I'm adding extra value within my industry and within the context of the work that I do. And so I'm better than the rest. I'm better than everybody else to an extent. And I've got something to show for it. And I can market myself better that way as an assessor. Definitely.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Next question is to Miguel. what is applied ability?
Thank you, Gabriel. I think, listening to the questions and the comments posed on the forum here, it actually comes together in this concept quite nicely. It's showing that you know something, that you've learned it somewhere along the line, whether it's academical or theoretical. In our world, we call it foundational aspects or foundational competence. So it's almost like baking the cake. It's knowing that you need the ingredients, and then there's the practical aspect of it to know how you put it together. And then thirdly, there is what we call a reflective aspect to it, is knowing what bowl to use to mix it in. So that's where the playing field that we're in as assessors, just to make sure that it's not only, like Peter said, a checkbox or a tick box exercise, but you're really looking at how concepts are applied in the workplace, whether it's a formal environment where you are a registered constituent assessor with an ETQA, where you award competence, like Giselle as mentioned, or judge competence, not award, judge competence, or you are the performance appraiser in a workplace, assessing and evaluating the way that somebody is conducting themselves in the workplace. So it's really bringing all of those concepts together, foundationally, practically, and reflectively, so that you have something that is done. It's an outcome that is achieved. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, we're moving to Darren. I think this is a question that's kind of mulling in all of our minds in the back, is what does assessment look like after COVID-19? And how is digital going to help with that? I think the fact that we in this crisis is actually accelerating this conversation. Darren, what's your take on that?
Thanks, Gabriel. So yes, we've been kind of walking the route of digital assessment for a while, and people are genuinely afraid of digital. So although they use it often, they're always on their phones, they're always on WhatsApp, they're always taking selfies and photos, and there's a plethora of that. People have struggled to convert that into a practical learning experience. So in the schools, people are going, oh, teachers must go digital. But if the teachers are afraid of going digital themselves, how do they impart them to kids? Now what's happened is COVID-19's kicked in. The CETAs aren't prepared for it. The DHET's not prepared for it. Universities aren't prepared for it. Most businesses aren't prepared for it. And everyone's going, take what you've done on paper and make it work online. And what they've done is they've gone, so do e-learning. Now, e-learning's been around for a while, and e-learning cannot assess your skill. It can only assess your ability to, your knowledge. What McGill was referring to is to reflexive knowledge. It can ask you a why question, for example. But e-learning cannot watch you serve a table as a waiter and say whether you're doing it right or wrong. So what's coming, or where we are right now with COVID-19, is the CETAs are so afraid, and I say it carefully, but how are they going to assess skill if all the learning's gone digital? And what we're doing is we're not talking about digital learning. We're talking about, or digital education, we're talking about what Giselle was talking about with learning on the workplace under someone who's helping you, a mentor or a coach, who are assessing you do your job, and then like McGill was saying, judging your competence. And if you can't do the job, they're simply going to guide you. Now, where it comes to digital is how do you prove that? Because if I don't know the assessor that has assessed you, I've never met them, how do I trust that what they've done is accurate? And this is where it's kind of fallen down. And so instead of solving the problem, everyone has to sign 500 pages. Well, pages are no longer necessary. What we have is a technology now where I can video you doing your job, serving the table, packing packets, putting masks on, against the criteria. And now I can assess you, and you can take the evidence with you. And this is what COVID-19 is now absolutely put in place, because people aren't going to want to get close to each other for at least 6 to 8 months after lockdown. There's going to be a huge health awareness coming through. So people are going to start their jobs again, but they're not going to want to, touch the same pens and paper, and where do you put paper and store paper? And so the solution that has been here for years has now arisen and gone, well, I'm here, I'm practiced, I'm skilled, use me. So here's what's coming. Assessors are going to have to use less and less paper. They're going to have to be able to observe their learners, maybe not live in the workplace, but through some kind of a digital medium. They're going to have to enable kind of handwritten or typed answers. They're going to have to be able to access audio notes. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have it in a safe place and have assessment online linked to a safe place. Where you drop it in Dropbox, oh, that's great. But then you assess on email and then you do a phone call, there's no link in that. In your safe place where everything happens in a safe place. So as we're launching this digital league, what we are really encouraging assessors to do is come on board. Doesn't cost you anything if you want to join into the digital platform. If you want to become assessed and know your level of assessment, which is what we're measuring at VAX level, we are starting that measure. We're putting it in place. You'll have access to it. But instead of training you on how to assess digitally, you'll be able to actually assess some learners that we have put into the technology and see how you rate yourself against the standard of assessment. And you can develop your own digital assessment skills. That way, you become very valuable to a market that desperately needs you right now in any form of assessment.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions that we want to... Just have a look here quickly. Darren, anything you wanna still add? I've got a question that might be slightly unrelated to what we're talking about, but it kind of ties in, and it kind of goes back to my experience in our audio industry. Is that I've realized now with this lockdown, because of what I've mentioned, our industry being so unregulated. Sorry, I just want to see.